Welcome in to another episode of Share the Chalk, a basketball webcast designed with the intention to give coaches with all types of experiences a platform to share their knowledge. As always, I want to begin with my goal when beginning this webcast. It was to bring on individuals who I believe are truly adding value and will continue to add value to the basketball community and the coaching community. Today, we're excited to bring on another GA who's at the highest level, someone who's had a lot of different experiences who I believe can help others learn about what it's like to be a GA and the things that go into being a successful GA. Today, we welcome on Drew Bryson, graduate assistant at Texas Tech University, formerly graduate assistant at Boise State under Coach Rice. Drew, thanks for joining us. We're excited to have you. How are we doing today?
Man, how are you doing? I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. I just want to first start with your journey and your story. Touch on where you started, where you've been, and where you're at now.
Yeah, so kind of a little bit of a crazy story. So I played Division III basketball at UW-Whitewater in Wisconsin. My freshman year, we were fortunate enough to win the national championship, so that was great. Played there for 4 years, finished school in 5 years. So my fifth year, obviously I was out of eligibility, so decided to stick around the program and help out as a student assistant. So I was able to dip my hand in some recruiting stuff and coach on the court, because at that level you don't have a certain limit on assistants. So even as a student assistant, you're able to recruit. So that was good for me too. And one of my mentors there when I played was Chad Boudreau. He was with Rob Jeter at UW-Milwaukee for about 10 years before he got let go there, and then came to Whitewater for 1 year before being a JUCO head coach. Now he's an assistant at Western Illinois. But he kind of guided me through the whole process of getting into Division I coaching. I just listened to everything he had to say and reached out to some other people too. And I was just doing random stuff like going to the AAU tournaments and just sitting in the gym all day, writing down notes on certain players and sending it out to coaches. I was basically a free recruiting service for coaches. So I did that. And then I was just reaching out to anyone and everyone that I could get a hold of that was willing to talk to me. I actually talked to Andy Farrell. He's a Dobo at Dayton, and he actually told me to learn Photoshop. So again, I was just listening to everything that those guys were telling me. So I got this free membership for Photoshop for a month and just watched YouTube videos and figured it out, just so that I could add value in that area too. But I was actually talking to Texas Tech, ironically, before I went to Boise. I had met Coach Al Pinkins. He's the associate head coach at Florida now, at the Final Four in Phoenix a few years back. Crazy story there. I got on the wrong train to ride in. I don't know if you were at the Final Four in Phoenix at all. But I was staying in Tempe with a buddy that went to ASU, and he actually got sick. He was going to come to the events with me. He got sick, and I was like, well, I'm already here. I might as well just go by myself. So I went down, and he had a train station that was like 0.2 miles away from his house, and then one that was like a mile away from his house. And I went to the wrong one. I went to the one that's a mile away from his house, and I ran into Coach Pinkins. I saw him decked out in like Texas Tech gear. His kids and his wife were wearing it too. And I was like, all right, he's got to be a coach. So I just went up to him and started talking to him. And it was like a 30-minute train ride. And by the end of it, got his number and just kind of stayed in contact from there. And, like I said, I was basically a free recruiting service for a lot of different schools. And he was one of them. He's probably annoyed with me about blowing up his phone, but I was kind of relentless with that because I wanted to get in so bad. But like I said before, I was just reaching out to so many different schools via email, like just reaching out to every Dobo that I could. And one of the people who reached back out to me via email was David Moats at Boise State. and he just said, yeah, well, our GA spot will be open, just kind of stay in touch, whatever. And I never heard from him again in the next, month or so. And I remember I was in our weight room at Whitewater, and I saw Coach Boudreau, who I had talked about before, and went up to him and kind of updated him on my situation, what schools I've reached out to, and I mentioned Boise State, and he's like, "Oh, my buddy coaches there." So I was like, "Really?" So he's like, "Yeah, let me get you in contact with him." So he called Coach Mike Burns for me, um, and I got in contact with Coach Burns, and same thing I was doing before with the free recruiting services and Photoshop, just sending them anything I could, trying to be as much help as I could without actually being there and being on staff, just trying to add value and show my work ethic there, and just staying in contact with them. This business is all about relationships. So just staying in contact with people. So I ended up going out to Boise State for my interview. And during that time, Coach Pinkins at Texas Tech was transitioning to Florida to be the associate head coach there. And I had told him, like, hey, I actually texted him. I remember texting him, getting on the plane to go out to Boise. Hey, just a heads up, like, I'm going out to Boise for a job interview. And I never heard from him. And then once I got off the plane, I saw a notification on Twitter saying that he was going to Florida. So then I obviously congratulated him and everything. And I was like, all right, that makes sense now. But long story short, they ended up offering me the job at Boise State about a week later, and packed up all my stuff and drove out there. And then was at Boise State for 2 years, worked for Coach Leon Rice there, had a great experience there. And then, obviously with all this pandemic stuff going on and transitioning away from the GA spot, I was originally planning on trying to get a full-time position somewhere, but, with all the COVID stuff going on, there really wasn't much out there. So I started looking at, every option that I could, and one of them was being a GA again. So I went through and looked at all the GAs in their second year at high major schools, and texted a list of those to our coaches, just to see if they knew anyone. And a couple of our coaches knew a couple of guys on staff here at Texas Tech. And like I said before, relationships are everything. Even if you don't get a recruit, or even if you don't get a job that you wanted, stay in contact with those people. So like I said, I didn't get the job through Coach Pinkins the first time around, but I stayed in contact with him, and he helped me with this job. Coach Rice likes is tight with Coach Beard too, so he had called him for me. Like I said, it's all about relationships, treating people the right way. Obviously, I had a great relationship with Coach Rice at Boise State, and worked my tail off for him. So he was really willing to help me out, and that's what it's all about, just the relationships. So now I'm at Texas Tech, working for one of the best coaches in the nation, and excited to learn from Coach Beard this year.
You have a great journey. I started out as a player. What was it that kind of led you to this industry? Why did you choose to be a coach? You've had a lot of experiences, but what was it about this field of work that led you to being a coach?
So like I said, I always wanted to coach. I originally thought that I wanted to be in high school coaching. But once I got to that college level, I really liked that more. And for me, what drives me is my mistakes and regrets as a player, and just kind of passing those on to my current players, and really just impacting someone else. That's what this business is all about, just impacting young lives, and teaching them life lessons that I wish I would have known when I was a player.
You didn't play high major basketball. However, you were very successful playing on a national championship team at Wisconsin Whitewater. What challenges have you had to overcome with getting yourself, into the Mountain West and now into the Big 12? What challenges have you had to overcome with not being that high major player? You can even go into what it's like working from a player development standpoint. Obviously, I know you can still play. We played a little bit in a manager game back when I was at Oregon and you were at Boise State, but talk about some of those challenges that you've had to overcome and how you've done that.
Yeah, so the biggest challenge for me was just adapting to being a part of a Division I program. Everything's just run differently. You got to be elite at every single level in order to be successful at that level. And there's just so much more pressure. I mean, at the Division III level, as a coach, and no offense to anyone who coaches D3, I think it's great, but there's just not as much pressure there to succeed. And there's not millions of dollars on the line. So just understanding how a Division I program operates, just simple stuff like setting up practice, and we didn't have to do anything like that at the Division III level. We had to bring the balls out and get some pads out, but just little details about everything. And obviously, the recruiting world is just a whole nother level in Division I than it is in Division III. So really just operating at that Division I level and how the program operates as a whole. That was my biggest hurdle that I faced when I joined the staff at Boise State.
Talk about some of those roles that you have at, being a GA at Boise State. Now you're transitioning into another GA position at Texas Tech. What does it look like being a GA? What type of roles do you have on a daily basis?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a little bit of everything. At Boise State, it's a little different than it will be here for me, just because it was a smaller staff. So on a smaller staff, I wore a lot of different hats. I dipped my hand in, helping with on-court workouts, mail outs, Photoshop. I was basically assistant director of ops there, helping our ops guy out with whatever. Really, anything and everything that you can think of, I dip my hand in. And really the biggest thing to be successful in this industry is just be willing and humble yourself to do anything they ask you to do, and just be as helpful as you can. Go wipe up sweat on the floor, whatever it is. No task is too small, and just be a star in your role.
What are some, you've talked a little bit about it, but, talk about a little bit more, if you can, some of the skills needed and some of the things that you focused on to be successful in each of your roles.
Yeah, so as a GA, I think the two most important things are, one, communication. You got to have great communication skills to be able to talk to coaches, talk to players, just administrative staff, just everyone, and relationships. Like I talked about before, relationships are so important in this business. I've heard stories of guys who weren't able to get a job because they didn't have a good relationship or a good vibe with one of the coaches that could have helped them get that job. So just treating everyone with respect, no matter who they are, whether it's a manager or a head coach, just treating everyone across the board with respect. And then the second thing besides communication and that is relating to the players. As a GA, you're kind of that liaison between the players and the staff. And you don't want to be their best friend, and you don't want to be, a hard ass to them. So kind of trying to find that happy medium where, I'm here to help you out, but I'm going to hold you accountable at the same time.